Hi guys, and welcome to another episode of Objectivist Girls. Sorry for all the technical difficulties. Google Hangout kind of disliked me and wouldn't put up the go live button for the Google Hangout. But we are here now, and we're super excited to get started. I have Richard Heathen from Liberty Machine News, and we're going to talk about conspiracy theory today. Hi, Richard. Introduce yourself. Say hi.
Hey, thanks for having me on. I'm Richard Heathen. I am a libertarian, a conspiracy analyst, and a lover of liberty. I have Liberty Machine News. My website is libertymachinennews.com, where I cover a variety of issues. I also have a YouTube channel. It's youtube.com/deathmetalpatriot. So yeah, basically what I do is I try to do research and kind of show expose crony capitalism and conspiracies, and kind of rail against the left.
And that is very important, to have people railing against the left and going against crony capitalism. But today we're going to focus on your article you wrote about conspiracy theory. So the audience should know that I do think very highly of you, but I disagree very deeply with this article, and you and I may get into it, but I want the audience to know that Richard and I are friends, and that no matter what happens on the show, we're still friends afterwards.
All right, deal.
So, Richard, you know, I got to tell you that I don't like conspiracy theory, and I'm going to tell you exactly why it is that I don't like conspiracy theory, and this may save us an entire hour of arguing. If you agree with this statement. So I find conspiracy theory is just like a magic show. Here is the important stuff, and here is the thing that I'm using to distract you. And I know that conspiracy theorists don't do it on purpose. I think some of them might, but that's my own conspiracy theory. But I think conspiracy theorists don't realize what they're doing is actually a magic show. They're throwing up this certain government action and saying, look what the government did, look what the government did, and instead of realizing that innately government is already immoral and shouldn't exist, and what we're doing is we're hyper-focusing on little aspects of what the government did instead of the philosophical whole, which is government is an agent of force and completely ridiculously unnecessary in the first place. So I think it's irrelevant whether they committed any of these heinous crimes that they're being accused of through conspiracy theory, because they just shouldn't exist in the first place.
Well,
what do you think?
I understand your point of view, and I do sympathize to a certain extent, but I think that, put it this way, if the government is involved in crimes, why shouldn't we talk about them? Why, if the government does something wrong, why shouldn't it be exposed?
Because go ahead.
Well, I don't understand the idea, because I'll give you a little background about myself. As a Canadian, I'm from Canada, and everyone around here has a default left-of-center kind of political bearing. And it was through, my interest in conspiracy, and which brought me to the philosophy of liberty. I listen to Alex Jones all the time. Then eventually, I was introduced to Ron Paul through Alex. And while I didn't, I respected Ron Paul because he spoke truth to power, but I was a little bit hesitant on his economic point of view. And his economic point of view, but because he kind of was into these other issues that I thought that I was concerned with, I was willing to give him the benefit of the doubt. And the more I listened to him, the more I kind of got on board with the message of liberty. So, well, the thing is, not everyone's going to be convinced by the philosophical argument. Sometimes people have to see the crimes that government does.
I still go with my magic show theory. I think that we need to be teaching people philosophically why it is the government shouldn't exist. It doesn't matter. They're already agents of force. They're already bad people. We don't need further proof that they're bad people. All we need is understanding of what it is that it means to be a government, and innately that is to be immoral.
Okay, but like I said, you're not always going to win everyone over with the philosophical argument. Some people just like, no, I disagree with you. This what you're saying makes me conflicted inside, and I don't believe it because I I've raised with the I was raised with 12 years of state indoctrination, and I believe the government is a expression of the people's will. So I think what conspiracy does is when just not just to, I think I use conspiracy theory as a broad term. I think that a lot of the stuff, pretty much everything the government does almost is a conspiracy in one way, shape, or form or another. So like everything, so exposing the crimes that the government commits, I think is a good practical way to show people that yes, everything that you've said is right, and I completely agree with it. But sometimes people have to see it, see the evil, see the manifest evil of it
See,
before they
and
can buy into it.
I intend to prove to you through this conversation that conspiracy theory does more harm than it does good. And so I guess I didn't save us an hour, and I guess we're going to have to do this because we're going to your article. So one of the first claims that you make is those who are trying to look credible to mainstream society, I say stop. They will never accept us or our ideology. We are antithesis of them and their worldview. Let me say this again to emphasize it. They will never accept you. Now, I think that's really starting out super negative, Richard. I mean, first I want to address the serious negativity, the tone that this takes. I think it's a bad negative tone. It's like us against them, and it's not even us against the government. It's us against other human beings, like normal human beings. I think that's unproductive.
Okay, well, I think that the people who are advocating force are advocating violence against me, and therefore, in a way, they are my enemies. And what what I meant by that, and maybe it wasn't super clear, is I don't understand why we should edit ourselves and not discuss certain issues just because of what certain actors in society may think of us. If I say nothing should be off the table. Any and every topic should be able to be discussed without this ridiculous social ostracism that people have when you talk about conspiracies, and even conspiracies that are actually legitimate and actually proven and actually historically accurate. So, and like I said, maybe my meaning wasn't clear, but I thought what I meant by that was we shouldn't edit ourselves.
Yes, but the way it comes across is very us against them, and I think, honestly, I would have liked the article just a little bit more if you hadn't started out with, because not all of those people are against us. Not all of those people that you're talking about that disagree with us on conspiracy theory, or because a lot of libertarians don't like conspiracy theory, and also a lot of normal people aren't actually advocating force. So there's a lot of gray area between the black and white that you're presenting in that article.
Okay, fair enough. I'll accept that criticism, but like I said, what I meant was just not. Because even among libertarians who don't like conspiracies or don't like to talk about conspiracies, they say that, oh, you shouldn't do this because it hurts the movement. Well, no, I don't care if it, quite frankly, I don't care if it hurts the movement if what I'm saying is true.
But why go ahead and pursue truth if it's not for the movement? Why not just keep it to yourself if it's not actually to improve or create a larger movement? I might as well not talk about it at all.
Well, because it's true, and for number one, because it's true, and number two, I don't really think it does hurt the movement myself. I don't think it does. I think Alex Jones brought way more people to liberty than Austin Peterson ever will.
See, I find that people think Alex Jones is hilarious. I watch Alex Jones for the humor of it. I think
so
that
do I. But I also
nuts.
But the thing is, there's a lot of truth to what he says. Just sit and listen to him and Google some of the stuff, and yeah, a lot of it is out there in left field. He misinterprets a lot of it, but there's always a certain kernel of truth to what he says, and you can find it. And if you I've learned a lot by just listening to the guy and Googling what he says, and there's a lot of information there.
But people miss that kernel of truth when it's surrounded by a bunch of bullshit, and I don't know what's there.
That's why I'm here. I'm doing what he should be doing.
But that's it. Is that when you surround yourself with a bunch of stuff It sounds completely incredible and off the wall. Everything you say after that point is uncredible and off the wall. Because
Okay, but I don't think I surround myself with that. He does, but the thing is, I can I can take the good, the kernels of truth and the kernels of all this truth and whatever, and I take it and I actually put it in a libertarian perspective, because like it or not, there's conspiracy theorists out there, and when people kind of see the kind of at first kind of see the nature of the state, start at very least not even the nature of the state, but start paying attention to reality, their minds are open for ideological conversion. And right now, that is that is happening through the far left, the Occupy. Wouldn't you rather, if there's going to be conspiracy theorists, wouldn't you rather them be libertarians than leftists?
No, because the conspiracy theorists are the ones that are making us all look uncredible.
According to who?
I'm sorry?
According to who?
According to me, and I'm going to prove it to you. So,
well, I can prove to you that there's a whole list of conspiracies that are actually true. So, is me presenting actual historical facts? Is that not credible?
No, that's absolutely credible. I'm saying that there's a difference between a conspiracy theory and actual history, because if it were history, then it would be called history, not conspiracy theory.
Well, I don't know. A lot of people think that the idea of Operation Mockingbird is a conspiracy when the CIA infiltrated networks and media throughout the U.S. and outside the U.S. to promote their agenda. People call that a conspiracy theory. So we have to define what a conspiracy theory is then, because to me, all this historical facts, all these things are conspiracies because they're.
And do you have proof that this actually happened?
Yes.
That this happened.
It's they exposed it in a congressional committee.
They've admitted it.
Yes.
Okay, that's different. That's not a conspiracy theory anymore.
Well, it's a conspiracy fact. So what's the difference? I don't know.
No, now it's a conspiracy fact.
Okay, yeah. Well, it's a difference between.
I'm sorry. I shouldn't say that. It was a joke because I understand that the theory of gravity is actually a fact, and most people confuse the word theory with not being a fact. The only reason that you call something a theory is because it's 99% true. So the point is that there are other reasons besides evidence that I have for this point of view, and we're gonna move on. Because we're arguing simply the first point that I have to make, and I have plenty of them. So the next thing you say is, even if specific conspiracy theories are untrue, examining them with an intellectual, curious state of mind opens up one's mind to possibilities and political perspectives never before thought possible. Now, here's the issue I take with that quote. What I find about that quote that is so troubling is that that's like saying that we should examine religion with the same eye that we examine evolution, or creationism with the same eye as we do evolution, and for those who are religious, we should examine Jack and the Beanstalk the same way that we examine gravitational pull. I mean...
We've just agreed that conspiracies happen. So you can't, and as far as I know, there's been no empirical proof that concretely proves that that any religion is 100% right. So you've already kind of lost it there, because we've already agreed that there's certain conspiracies that actually happen, and we've not. Is there any religions that have been proven to be true?
But it doesn't matter, because the people that are purporting it are taking every single one of these things as equal. That all of
that's not. They're not all equal. David Icke thinks that the whole world is shape-shifting reptiles. Does that mean, or the whole world's controlled by shape-shifting reptiles? Is that on the same level of people who think that the Federal Reserve, who talk about the Federal Reserve as a conspiracy? No, it's not the same. The Federal Reserve actually exists. It's a documented fact. Jekyll Island, 1913, all this happened, and then that's a fact, and that's a conspiracy theory because it's a theory about a conspiracy, but it's also backed up by reason, logic, and evidence. You have the David Icke thing. That's not backed up by reason, logic, or evidence. So you cannot compare the two.
I had a note about exactly this statement. So what I'm going to say to that is that when a conspiracy theory is disproven, we lose credibility. So those conspiracy theories that are actually credible are ignored and put in the same category as the ones that are not. We look worse and worse as we are proven wrong, so the only conspiracy theories we should support are those who have more credibility than the innate credibility of the government. And so what I'm saying is that the trouble with this is that when you just go about and are able to make conspiracy theories like, you know, giant reptiles rule the world, and, you know, conspiracy theorists are saying things like that, then it throws things like 9/11 is an inside job in the same category, which actually has a nugget of credibility. I mean, I would not say that I think that it's true. I would say that it has far more evidence than reptiles ruling the earth.
Okay, but that's you're painting everyone with the same brush and being incredibly collectivist on this. I think if someone says proposes a conspiracy theory that's ridiculous, it only discredits them. It has nothing to do with me. It has nothing to do with you. You know, one person only speaks for themselves. They don't speak for me. Do they? I don't know. I don't let David Icke speak for me. Do you let David Icke speak for you? You know, David Icke speaks for himself. Alex Jones speaks for himself. Lauren Rumpler speaks for herself. Richard Heathen speaks for myself. Like, we are all individuals.
That's just it, is that when we put ourselves in the category, I mean, a lot of people like to sit around and say that we're not collectivized, but the human mind naturally groups people together. And even if you want to state that you're an individual and you have your own individual mind, then you need to come up with a different word than conspiracy theory, because conspiracy theory means Alex Jones. Conspiracy theory means tinfoil hat and
maybe to you, but that's
and objectivism means Ayn Rand. And while I like to try and fight that as much as humanly possible, I understand when people call me out on her BS. And I understand, and I take that, and I actually talk about it, and realize that that is the category that I'm putting myself in.
Well, first of all, you know, we have to look at where this term conspiracy theory came from. It actually started by, it was started to discredit people who had questions about the Kennedy assassination, the Warren Commission. So right before that, it was actually quite a neutral term. So, you know, I'm not going to change the name of what it is just because other people have a negative connotation with it. I think I should. I don't know. And also, if I did that, it would be somewhat disingenuous, I think.
Okay. Well, the next thing that you said in the article actually disproves what you said previously.
Okay.
So you said, I mean, if you figured out the state is controlled by an elite oligarchy where debate is restricted within the narrow parameters and the major parties represent establishment interests exclusively, it makes sense that you wouldn't be, and if you're reading this, probably aren't engaged in mainstream politics. But doesn't this go exactly against your stance on being open to all ideas? I mean,
explain to me how I'm not getting what you're trying to say. So break it down for me if you could.
So you stated that these people aren't watching mainstream politics, and that conspiracy theorists don't watch mainstream politics because they're underrepresented in mainstream politics. But that's just, I mean, that's stating exactly the opposite of what you're advocating, which is open ideas and open-mindedness.
Okay, I don't understand. You know, you're really losing me. I don't understand the contradiction. So you'll have to break it down for me like I'm five. I'm just. I'm sorry. You know, maybe I'm not as bright as you. I just don't know.
If you ignore one person's ideas, then according to you, that's being closed-minded.
Well, I don't think I said that. I said if you ignore ideas without properly examining them, I think you're being closed-minded. But you know, are you going to say that the state is and it's the philosophies that push, are they legitimate?
So should I examine Jack and the Beanstalk in the same stroke as I examine gravitational theory?
No, no. It doesn't put this way. I'm not going to answer yes or no. I'm going to say you should. Is there evidence to examine Jack and the Beanstalk? Is there real evidence to examine that theory in a logical way? Is there evidence that Jack and the Beanstalk existed, or what have you? Is there actual evidence? If there's evidence, show it to me, and I'll probably shoot holes through it. But if there's not evidence, then no.
I don't think it's strictly about the evidence for it. I think there's also something to be said for the evidence against it. And there's way more evidence against many of these conspiracy theories than is for them.
Okay.
And the other thing is that the evidence against it is coming from a source that people trust more than they trust us, which is the government. People, unfortunately, trust the government. Many of them do. And I think that to purport a conspiracy theory is a bad idea just because you're turning people off to libertarianism by pitting us against the government in a way in which we can't win.
But we're already against the government. We're saying the government's illegitimate.
Right.
And that's a lot of ways.
In the way that, in the philosophical sense, we can win with ideas. We can't win in stating that they're killing massive amounts of people in which we don't have any actual evidence for it. Like,
okay, well, don't state it then. If there's not evidence, I'm all about taking things that are conspiracies and finding the evidence and weighing the evidence. Like, okay, what you said previously, that there's all this evidence to contradict certain conspiracy theories. Do you have any in mind that you can cite offhand? Like, I'm not trying to put you on the spot here, but I'm just saying, I think we need to examine the evidence for and the evidence against. We may come to different.
The evidence against can simply be just to other people, not to me, not to open questioning minds, or not open, but active. I like to say active questioning minds. Because open just accepts anything, and active actually filters things, which is what I think you're talking about. But the point is that to other people who don't have active minds and trust the government, the evidence against can simply be denial by the government that it actually happened.
But
and that's what I'm saying. We're fighting a losing battle with conspiracy theories.
But I'm not saying that's the only avenue we should. I'm not saying that's the only avenue we should take, but I still don't see why we shouldn't examine them. Like I said, to counter your point that you're worried all these other people will shut us down. Well, there's so many people that have come to liberty through conspiracy. So many people that have come here by examining evidence of whatever and seeing that the government is doing illegitimate things. And so it's a double-edged sword. I'm not suggesting if you don't want to promote conspiracy, then don't. I do. I think it's a healthy avenue for exploration and intellectual curiosity. It's interesting stuff when you study what Rothbard called he called it power elite analysis. Like what Rothbard did, and some people called him a conspiracy theorist. He just studied the connections between the elites, like the governments, and what people did before they were in power and after in power, and all of a sudden it's coming to the point where any criticism of government is considered a conspiracy theory. So to shut down the whole idea of conspiracy theory is to shut down a lot of criticism of the state.
Okay, let's just go over a few conspiracy theories that I'm actually familiar with. So, what do you think pops into people's minds when they hear conspiracy supporters state that the government just killed thousands of people?
Okay, how did they kill them? I'm open to the idea.
No, I mean 9/11. That 9/11 was an inside job and that the government killed its own citizens. What do you think normal, average people who have never thought the way that we think right now would think of that? Because I honestly think what they would think is those people are insane.
No, they react emotionally because 9/11 is a very emotional issue. You know what I mean? I'm on the fence of 9/11. I think there's a lot of evidence that there's definitely something happening there. I don't know if it was controlled demolition. I don't know if it was there was vehicles found with explosives at the George Washington Bridge on 9/11. So I don't know what happened there, but I think that we need to kind of explore the issues. And people are going to, when you say taxation is theft, people respond emotionally. So I don't think that we should edit ourselves or basically base what we do on what everyone else is thinking. You know, I think there's a lot of room for us. And actually, when preparing for this debate, I actually kind of got a little, I had a epiphany as such, and I think we need libertarians everywhere. We need libertarian conspiracy theorists. We need libertarian firefighters. We need libertarian. You know, this will actually I've been very critical of what's her name, Kathy Reisenwitz, because of her kind of step into feminism. But now that I'm thinking about it, you know, maybe we need libertarians there. You know what? Maybe because I'm trying to appeal to a certain demographic of people and bring them into liberty and show them that yes, these conspiracies happen, but statism is the underlying problem. And, you know, she's doing something else. So, you know, I think we need people everywhere to address all these issues.
Do you really think that it honestly matters whether the government either flew the planes into the building, knew it was going to happen, or was just incompetent and stupid enough to let it happen? Because
of course I think it matters.
Hold on. One of those three things definitely happened. I'm going to go with the latter because they're pretty incompetent and stupid. But it doesn't matter. It's completely irrelevant. You know why? Because they're incompetent and stupid. And either way, they're either murderers or they're incompetent and stupid. And either way, it doesn't matter which one they are.
No, but you're saying it doesn't matter who murdered 3,000 people. That's what you're saying. You're saying it doesn't matter who murdered 3,000 people. You're saying, you know, I'm sorry, but I can't. Does it matter to the person? That's like saying, oh, well, that guy down the street got killed, but it doesn't matter because the guy's dead and killing is immoral. That's
not what I'm saying. That's not what I'm saying at all. It totally matters. I think it was the government's fault either way you swing it.
Okay, but the thing is...
No. I think that their relationship, our government's relationship with other people, the way they push people around, the way they bully people, the way they get involved in other people's business, the way that they handle foreign relations, and everything else, it makes every single attack on an American citizen their fault. It is all their fault. And you know why? Because we have a central authority, and that causes other central authorities to hate us. When you are not represented by a central authority, it is a lot more difficult for other people to hate you in a large enough mass group in which to want to attack you and destroy your buildings and kill your people. Because we're not represented by a collective at that point. I think no matter how you swing it, it was the government's fault that all of those people died, whether through efficiency or actual conspiring.
Okay. Well, I get what you're saying, but I still think who the actors, like what I consider what I do. I don't even consider it really conspiracy theory. I just use that term because that's what other people call it. I consider it basically investigative reporting. But you know, I don't want to focus on 9/11 because, quite frankly, 9/11 isn't my strong suit. What I've been focusing on is Agenda 21, the rise of collectivism.
Well, then, I was going to touch on chemtrails really quickly, if you don't mind.
Okay. Well, chemtrails is also something I'm very skeptical about.
And then you can educate me on Agenda 21, but I have to tell you, there's nothing to me that stands out quite like chemtrails. It is a whole animal of its own. The idea that government is, well, some people think that they're just, you know, deflecting solar rays, but other people think that they're poisoning food and, you know, poisoning our water for mind control. And where do you stand on this? Are you on mind control or plant poisoning or just sun ray blocking?
I don't even know if chemtrails exist. I know that it was exposed in like the 70s that they were spraying dust out of some sort of radioactive dust out of planes to basically judge the effects. They also did it on in buildings. I think it was in. It's on the bottom of my article, the news clip. It's all it was a mainstream news clip based on documents got through freedom of information. I don't know what they're doing now, but I know that they would do it if it suited their agenda. You know, if they wanted to, they would do it. They've done it in the past. Like I said, they sprayed radioactive dust over over poor areas in a city in the United States. Like I said, the video is at the bottom of the second. I think it was one of the videos at the bottom of the article. So they would do it. I don't know if chemtrails are happening, but they would do it if they wanted to. They wouldn't be stopped by any sort of moral objections. Just whether it suits their agenda or if it's what they want.
Yeah. See, here's the problem I have with that statement. What is their agenda? And without knowing their agenda, I think we don't have any credibility whatsoever to say that they're spraying radioactive dust. How do we know that they're spraying radioactive dust?
I don't know if that's what they're doing now, but that's what they've done in the past. It's it's a fact.
What's the proof that it was radioactive dust? That's what
Freedom of Information documents. It was a mainstream, like I said, Freedom of Information documents gotten from the government. So again, they've admitted it.
Okay, fine. If they've admitted it, again, and I appreciate that they're getting the government to admit things. And they're stopping the government from doing some of the horrible things that they're doing. I'm going to go back to the point that they're still doing other horrible things, and we're just fighting one battle at a time instead of just, philosophically changing people's minds to, not want government in the first place. And but I mean, I digress. But the point is that if there is some credence to this idea of chemtrails, if it is possible, then it's being diluted by ideas like reptiles rule the earth or whatever other conspiracies are out there that have no evidence. Because I know there's plenty out there. I mean, and when you go at somebody emotionally like that, and you say something like 9/11 was an inside job and the government's murdering people, people are immediately, it doesn't matter how much evidence you have. First of all, people believe the government over us because they kind of think we're crazy already. And second of all, they're going to respond emotionally because that's what people do. And they think to themselves, why would the government want to kill my kids? These people are crazy. And my government loves me, and they're going to protect me from the terrorists. And that's just it, is that we lose more and more credibility every time we say things like this. But it's not only 9/11. It's things like it's a lot of these things.
I disagree. I gotta interject. I totally and utterly disagree. I think when people hear that the blatant anti-government sentiments, like, oh, the government killed 9/11 was an inside job, blah blah whatever, I think it pushes. Put it this way: when you're vocal and out there with your opinion, it can't help. It pushes the Overton window. That is the window of socially acceptable opinions in our favor. You hear, no matter, they can't unhear something, and the more that the anti-government rhetoric becomes commonplace, the more people are going to find it socially acceptable to get on board and be anti-government. So I'm welcome any and all anti-government voices. Now, I think we have to be careful about, like you said, which conspiracies we promote. But like I said, let us just focus on the ones with evidence. If I'm happy to debunk ones that are.
You said it's an intellectually dishonest to not open your mind to all ideas and
until you've examined them.
But what is examination? That's just it. Is you haven't defined what it means to have enough evidence to say something that is credible.
Okay, fair enough. The way I look at it is through the lens of a criminal justice investigation. Investigate who had the benefit. Basically, let's apply the same principles to the government that we do to citizens through a criminal investigation. The same protocols. Are you opposed to that? I don't think anyone should be opposed to that.
So you want to criminally investigate the government for every claim?
For claims where they might be held accountable, like 9/11, I think that does deserve a criminal investigation. I think the war in Iraq deserves a criminal investigation.
They tried that. They tried calling them before.
Then they did the 9/11 commission, but that, like I said, that wasn't an independent investigation.
people use that as evidence for 9/11. I mean, if I let all of those Americans die, I wouldn't want to go before the Supreme Court, even if I wasn't involved in the planning of it. Just the
Well,
fact that
I think they might have.
I was retarded enough not to be able to prevent it with all the damn resources that we have.
Okay, well, that's another thing. A point I make when I talk about 9/11, which I rarely do, is that whether they're guilty of it or not, they should be held accountable for criminal negligence. They're either guilty of it or they're guilty of criminal negligence at very least. I think there's much more sinister things behind 9/11, but again, I don't 9/11, the facts of 9/11, I used to be kind of hardcore into it, but I've moved on to other things that are kind of more cut and dry. So again, I don't like to focus on 9/11 truth because it's polluted with so much BS, and I just haven't been able to sort through all of it because I focus on other things that are really kind of more pressing for where I live.
Okay. All right, I'm going to move on to another argument that I want to make, and your quote's a bit long, but I think it's worth going over. You said, one of the most common critiques levied against those who talk about conspiracy is the theme that government is so inefficient in providing basic services that the idea that they could organize a complex conspiracy isn't plausible. To determine whether or not this is true, we need to examine why government is inefficient in providing these basic services and how things might be different when it comes to organizing violence. Government-provided services fail for starters because they don't have any incentive to succeed. They are run by bureaucrats who not only do have an incentive to succeed, but also don't have any disincentive to fail. Oh, don't have any incentive to succeed, but also don't have any incentive to fail. If they fail, they will likely get more money in the budget next year. If they succeed in actually being efficient and not spending their whole budget, many times that will result in a smaller budget next year. In this way, the state disincentivizes waste.
Or no, incentivizes waste.
Right. Doesn't this make them too disorganized to be able to accomplish any of the conspiracies that you actually are accusing them of? Because I don't think they're honestly organized to do any of the things you guys are accusing them of.
Okay, well, we have to examine the difference between providing services in the whatever waste management or whatever and running violence. By very definition, the state has to be the organization that is the most efficient user of violence in a geographical area. If they weren't, some other organization or network would outcompete them for violence and would claim the exclusive right to use force in that geographical area. If the state wants to succeed in being in control, it has to be the most efficient user of violence. Now, they do complex operations all the time in the military, psychological operations. I think this is a big fault or kind of a. All right, you can interject.
I want to state really quickly that I disagree entirely with that. I don't think they're the most efficient arbiters of force. I think they're just the largest. So I don't think that it has anything to do with efficiency level. I think it's just that they have a really, really, really big military with a bunch of jarheads involved.
Okay, but if they weren't the biggest and most efficient, if they weren't the best at it, we can squabble over the term efficient or not. But if they weren't the best at it, then another country would take them over. You know what I mean? They have to be.
That's not true. I think the largest in this case is winning out, just because there's no organization that can compete with the largesse of the government. I don't think there's any.
You're talking about you're talking about the U.S. government. There's more governments in the world than the U.S. The military in my country is very, very small. They still have to be organized to a certain point so they can maintain their control.
Look, you could either shove a boulder on top of someone, or you can throw a bunch of little rocks at someone. They have the same effect. And that's what I'm saying, is that the government is just a big boulder. They don't actually have to have the level of accuracy that you claim that they do. They're just a big boulder. And because they're a big boulder, when even the little screw-ups that they make that are inefficient, even the large screw-ups, they actually can't compensate for the size. So they're still effective just because of size alone.
Okay, but you're not taking into account previously admitted conspiracies. You're not taking into account the intelligence networks that are around. They do psychological operations. They've overthrown other governments. I think it's a fairly historical proven fact that the military and the intelligence networks around the world are they're fairly efficient at what they do. Yes, sometimes things come up, but do you actually think that every conspiracy the government has ever done has seen the light of day?
I think if they were really that efficient when they actually did admit to chemtrails, they wouldn't have ever had to admit to chemtrails.
No, the thing is, those aren't chemtrails. This is a different theory. The chemtrail theory is completely different than what I was talking about earlier. I was just saying they have sprayed radioactive dust over people.
They wouldn't have had to admit to that. I mean, if they really were so efficient, they wouldn't have had to explain anything to us. I mean,
well, it was in the 70s, right? And I think a lot of that was heavily redacted, but the freedom, you know what I mean? You're right. There is certain inefficiencies, but that doesn't mean they're not able to do what they want to do. Because, like I said, all this stuff has happened in the past. There are intelligence networks that have that have overthrown governments, that have done actual conspiracies. These are facts. And like the big one is the overthrow of Iran. They overthrew the Mohammad Mossadegh of Iran in the 50s or something. So like they do this stuff all the time. You know what I mean? So the idea that they can't do it is false.
They couldn't even find one leader. I mean, when Obama, I'm sorry, when Obama found Osama bin Laden, that was like a big deal. And they looked for him forever. I mean, it took them that long to find one guy running the country.
If you believe that's if you believe the official story. Some people, there was oh god, I say I gotta like just write stuff and memorize it, because someone in the basically there's a lot of evidence, or some evidence, to suggest that he wasn't dead. I'm not going to try and make the case for it because I'm unprepared for that. If I knew we were going to go into Bin Laden, I would have looked up the whole Bin Laden thing and had the evidence and said who said what. But I wasn't prepared for Bin Laden, so I didn't go into Bin Laden. But there's evidence, or at least theories, to suggest that maybe he wasn't dead the whole time. That they were just waiting to that his body was on ice just to put him at an efficient political time. You know what I mean?
There's also theories that state that he was here in America at a hospital the whole time.
Well, he was actually, before 9/11, he was on dialysis for some really horrible disease. So I don't know. You know what? I'll concede the Bin Laden thing, because I don't have the facts to kind of surround me right now. If I like I said, if I knew we were talking about it, I would have had the evidence, and I would have said, well, what about this, that, and the other? So whatever. I'll concede the point on the Bin Laden thing. But I really wanted to talk about the rise of.
So you're not sure about 9/11. You're not sure about Osama bin Laden. Chemtrails are iffy. What was the one that you were more sure of?
United Nations Agenda 21.
Yeah, there you go.
And the rise of collectivism. In my film, I document the rise of. I basically document how the tax-exempt foundations, like the Rockefeller, Carnegie, all these other institutions. There's a few more. Ford Foundation, I think. They were all funding pro-communist, pro-socialist programs and pushing them into schools. That is real. That is documented. I was able to interview a former policy advisor for the Department of Education under Reagan, Charlotte Iserby. She documents all this stuff in her book. Was it the Deliberate Dumbing Down of America? She was actually fired from releasing classified documents. So also, these foundations have an agenda that is basically carried on until today. Like I said, like the Rockefellers, they gave the land for the United Nations. Rockefeller in his book talks about how he says, oh, conspiracy theorists have accused me of wanting of plotting with others for like a one world agenda, and basically he says, yeah, and I stand by that and I'm proud. So like this isn't a conspiracy theory. I can tell you about the Canadian foundations that are getting money from Canadian activists that are getting money from American foundations to oppose Canadian oil sands. The same foundations that are funding the oil sands protesters are also funding sustainable development think tanks here in Canada to push all this kind of nonsense. So, you know, let's talk about, like, that's my area of expertise. Like, the United Nations Agenda 21 was founded in 1992 at the Rio Summit. They got money. The 90% of the money that was used to put the Rio Summit on was funded by the Rockefeller and Ford Foundations, according to an investigative reporter. You know what I mean? The Agenda 21 talks about limiting how much we can eat, how much we can, you know, not eat, but they basically say the resources we're consuming too much, and that we have to kind of use government to centrally plan everything so we can be in alignment with the environment. And they're using all that stuff now. All these foundations are funding think tanks and activist groups to kind of push this agenda. Like, I can give you more details. Ask me some more pointed questions.
Okay. So I think the conclusion I've come to through this is that you need a different word besides conspiracy theory for the ones that actually have really any evidence at all. Because, I'm sorry, 9/11 doesn't have enough evidence. Chemtrails don't have enough evidence. The lizards definitely have no evidence. And but I'll tell you, I mean, there are things like aliens that people still scoff at, which cracks me up, because the statistics alone are in favor of aliens, of other, not aliens, but other life being out there. And then there's Agenda 21, which I don't know enough about, but it seems like it may have some credibility to it and may be worth examining, but you've lost the word conspiracy theory. It's not owned by the intelligent anymore. It's owned by the people that just want to point the finger at the government and go, you're doing all these horrible things. I mean, they just want to find little nitpicky things to blame on the government and blow this whole thing out of proportion. And,
well, what touch base on 9/11 again? I totally and utterly disbelieve the government's account. I just don't know if you know, if they worked with Muslims or the Israelis, because apparently there were some Israelis who were. I mentioned the bombs found, the vans with explosives found on the George Washington Bridge. Apparently the guy who was running that was driving that was Israeli, part of close to tied to Israeli intelligence. So I don't have a firm idea of 9/11 because there's too much out there to kind of talk about, but I definitely do think that the government is lying about 9/11 and that there was some government involvement in, but I just don't know, and I don't know enough to make a definitive case. There's so much stuff, Ed. There's a lot of people who do know this stuff back to front who would probably give you a much better account than I can, but the thing is, that's not my speciality. Like, I can come out and say a bunch of stuff. I can copy the major truth or talking points, you know, controlled demolition, thermite, all that stuff. But there is a scientific rebuttal to that, and I don't know. I'm not a scientist, so I try and stick with things that have a paper trail that are factual, that are not just fact. I don't want to say factual because I think there's a lot of good work that the 9/11 truthers do, but that I can prove and that I know for a fact.
I think the outlying thing that I'm getting from this conversation is, and you need to understand this, there is a word in objectivism that I do not use. It is the word selfish, because I have lost that word. I'm not going to win it back. They've already corrupted the word, so I use rational self-interest. It means the exact same thing, except for it's got the word rational before it, so it's much easier to argue. So what I'm thinking is the best solution here, and we should start talking about a solution because we've got about 10 minutes. So I want to talk to you about solutions for actually making some of these things. It's like just discerning what is ridiculous and what is credible, because you can't put them all in conspiracy theory. And I'll tell you what, conspiracy theory is now ridiculous. I mean, people have decided it is ridiculous. You can't win it back. It's like selfish. You just need to leave it alone. So don't beat the dead horse. Just, you need to find a criteria of evidence to put these things like maybe Agenda 21, maybe 9/11, and all of these other things that actually have viable evidence to them, and look at what the criteria would be to put it in this category and come up with a completely different word.
Well,
Because I'll tell you what, you can't have conspiracy theory back. You just can't. And the more that we push the term conspiracy theory, the more nutty we all look.
Well, I don't know, but I'm going to be labeled with that word anyway, so I figure I might as well just embrace it. You know what I mean?
No, but that's just as I think that we have the control of the ideas. I really think that we're regaining control. I mean, look at the popularity, the growth of Objectivist Girl. Look at the growth of Prax Girl. Look at Jeffrey Tucker's growth. I mean, I think we're starting to actually have an audience to philosophical ideas, and I think that we have an opportunity here to define our terms. And I think that what we need is to redefine and understand the word conspiracy theory and just give it up. Like the word selfish. And I know that it's just easier to just say the hater's gonna hate or whatever, but you gotta try, and if this is really your goal, is to spread information about this. I still say it's a magic show, but if that's your goal, you need to come up with a different word and work towards legitimizing what goes in that category.
Well, I hear what you're saying, and I've done that a little bit. I refer to myself generally as a conspiracy analyst, and I kind of, instead of using the term New World Order, I still use it sometimes, but generally I refer to it as the rise of the global state, because there's a definite move to move power, state power, up to the global level. That's just a fact. Globalism is happening, and the goal. Put it this way: if you think the state is good and legitimate and a good way to solve complex social problems, then world government seems to make perfect sense, right? It's just a natural. I look at world government, the push for world government, as the natural progression of statism, and I kind of use that as a way to kind of, you have to kind of appeal to people. At least, I know this kind of contradicts what I said earlier, but at some level, you should appeal to people's biases, and the way I do that is I use, they want to take away national sovereignty, so you should fight against the growth of a global state. And quite frankly, if libertarians think the state is bad, they should really fight against the rise of the global state, because that's just going to be the ultimate of centralized control, centralized power.
I'm sorry, I've got a plane flying over. They're probably dropping some radioactive dust on me right now. I'm sorry, I just had to go there.
Well, you know what? I'm sending you the link after this is done, so you can watch it. About the news broadcast, it's it's a historical thing, so whatever.
So I'm trying to see if there are any questions or anything, but everybody seems to have gone completely silent, which is surprising, because normally I've got all sorts of comments, and I want to see if maybe there's any way I can answer any questions that people have, but it looks like everybody's decided to go really quiet on me.
We still have viewers?
No, we have plenty of viewers. But so I guess, where can people find you? Tell us more about what you do. And
well, people can find me at libertymachinenews.com, or you can find me on my YouTube channel, which is youtube.com/deathmetalpatriot. You can find me on Facebook, the Liberty Machine News page, if you like what I'm into. And like I said, there is an agenda being pushed by elite interests. It's actually quite documentable, and there's different networks like the Council on Foreign Relations is a favorite whipping boy of people like me. But there was a guy named Carroll Quigley. He was a professor of history at Georgetown University, and he wrote a 1,400-page volume called Tragedy and Hope, where he talked about the founding of the Council on Foreign Relations and all these other groups, the roundtable groups he called them, because he was actually invited into this elite network and to study their papers for 2 years, and he was actually a mentor to President Bill Clinton. Bill Clinton name-checked him in his acceptance speech for the when he accepted the Democratic Party's nomination for president. So there is historical, verifiable, I would say credible proof to show that elite networks exist. And the book I like to quote is for as far as talking about how this kind of works in Canada is Cloak of Green by Elaine Dewar. If you're Canadian and you want to understand how the environmental network works and how it's being implemented here in Canada through how Agenda 21 works, basically the network behind it, I would check out her book. Elaine was a freelance journalist who wrote for Maclean's, a lot of the big other big name newspapers up here. So like I said, these people are actually credible, and the information in their books is, I think, very interesting.
Okay. So I just want to go ahead and tell you guys where you can find me. A lot of you came from my station, but anyway, I am Objectivist Girl. I teach objectivism through YouTube. You should add me on Facebook. That's where I put all of my blog articles and pretty much everything from my other shows. I also am doing a new show called Hearts and Minds on the Voluntary Virtues Network, which will be at 6 p.m. and it'll also be followed by Objectivist Girl. So you can check out Objectivist Girl there as well. And my other show, True Objective, is on hiatus at the moment, but we are exploring new co-hosts for the show, and I think we may have somebody really special. I think you're going to really like her. And that's all the information that I'm going to give you on that one. But it's exciting because it'd be great to have another girl involved in one of my shows and to work with a girl. And because, I just think that Liberty needs more ladies, right? Why not? But it needs more people in general, and she's really smart and really cool. And so anyway, the point is that you can find out and check out my shows, and I hope you'll check out Richard. And know that Richard and I are still friends, even though I think we still really disagree on a lot of things. We may do this in the future, and hopefully he'll have me on his show. But I do want to leave off with the idea that I'm still convinced that conspiracy theory is a magic show with the important stuff over here and the sleight of hand over here, which is the conspiracy theory. I think it's a distraction from the philosophical understanding that force is unnecessary in our society, and that anybody that owns a monopoly on force is inherently immoral, so it doesn't really matter what other immoral things that they do. They're just immoral innately. So I think it's a distraction, but I respect Richard and his point of view, and I appreciate him coming on, and I hope you guys have enjoyed this episode of Objectivist Girl, and I hope you'll tune in later this week when I release my video on We the Living. So, Richard, thank you so much for coming on. I hope you had a good time.
All right, thank you very much, and you can find my show on the Voluntary Virtues Network as well, Liberty Machine News. It'll be a weekly video cast of newscast of various issues, and yes, you will hear the odd conspiracy theory, and a lot of what you'll hear will be how Agenda 21 is, robbing us of our liberty, destroying property rights, and just promoting collectivism. So thank you for having me on. We'll definitely have to do this again.
Awesome. I look forward to it. Remember, guys, knowledge is not for all men, but for those who seek it. So keep seeking.